Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Graham Hales. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Bennett, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge the Military Regional Strategic Communication Delegation from the Department of Defence. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Holy Cross Catholic School, Kincumber, and Warner Vale Public School. And from Victoria, Surrey Hills Primary School. I invite you all now to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war or operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Bennett. He grew up and attended school in Sofala and later worked as a miner, the area being known for gold. Standing just 5'3" tall, John had brown hair and blue eyes. In May 1916, aged 23, Bennett enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force and joined camp at Bathurst early the following month. One of the local papers mentioned Bennett and his good friend, Alf Hyland, making a flying visit home to Sofala just before heading off, and wished them both good luck and safe return. Bennett was assigned to the 5th Reinforcements to the 54th Battalion, and at the end of September, he and his comrades embarked on the troop transport Aeneas. Bennett was laid low during the voyage, struck down by the case of the mumps. Arriving in Plymouth, England that November, Bennett trained with the 14th Training Battalion and heard court in Wiltshire, and was sent over to France just before Christmas, joining the 54th Battalion on New Year's Day 1917. The 54th was out of the front line at this time, but still close enough to hear the constant artillery fire from the front. The winter was cold, muddy, and miserable. In early February, the 54th Battalion went back to the front lines on the Somme and joined the fighting to take Bapaume. The Germans soon retreated to the heavily fortified Hindenburg Line, and the Australians caught up with them at a place called Bullecourt. Weeks of heavy fighting followed, and in mid-May, the 54th Battalion was sent into action to hold the hard-won trenches. One digger described it as a hellish part of the line. In the early morning of the 15th of May, the Germans made a last-ditch attempt to recapture part of the line near Bullecourt. The 54th Battalion was directly in the path of the attack and was subjected to intense artillery bombardment. With the help of the men from the neighbouring London Regiment, the Australians managed to repulse the Germans, but at considerable cost. The 54th suffered almost 300 casualties, and in just a few hours of desperate fighting. One of those killed was John Bennett. His mate Alf Hyland wrote home to the Bennetts to relate how he had died. With a bullet to the head, poor little Jack's death was instantaneous, and he was given a battlefield burial by another of his mates, Private Morgan. However, his remains were later lost or could not be identified, and his name is now listed in the Villa Bretneau Memorial of the Missing. Private Bennett's death was reported in the local papers back home. It was the first from Sofala to fall in the war. This young man had left only a few months ago, full of youthful courage, and his death was a sad loss to the community. His good friend Vera Bright wrote wistfully on the first anniversary of his death. "Dear Jack, how much I miss you. Little we thought when we parted it would be our last farewell." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today besides the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Bennett, who gave his life for us for our freedoms and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.